Before we dive into today's tale, I invite you to share where you're watching from in the comments below. And if you like what you hear, give us a thumbs up and subscribe. I was sitting at the breakfast table, nursing a mug of coffee as the morning sun warmed the room. Across from me, Brenda quietly skimmed through the local paper while stirring her tea with absent-minded precision. To my right, Karen was absorbed in her phone, her expression a study in disinterest. The only sounds were the occasional clink of cutlery and the soft rustle of newspaper pages. A simple symphony of a morning that had become as comforting as it was fragile over our 5 years of marriage. Brenda carried the weight of her past like a shadow. Her divorce from Marcus had been nothing short of a living nightmare. That brutal, chaotic chapter, marked by his drunken rages and physical abuse, left deep, often unseen scars. She rarely mentioned those dark times, but even then, I could hear the underlying tremor in her voice when his name was uttered. I entered her life just months after that painful chapter closed. We had met at a dinner party arranged by mutual friends, a night where, against all odds, her laughter lit up the room and her genuine ear made me feel truly heard. A year of dating later, we married. And then there was Karen, 18 years old and part of the package. I knew stepping into the role of stepfather wouldn't be a breeze. Karen was polite, yet a barrier existed between us that neither of us could dismantle, and I accepted that completely. I did my utmost to care for them, and if Karen saw me only as her mother's husband, so be it. In recent months, however, the vibrant connection Brenda and I once shared had grown distant and cool. The warmth was slowly replaced by a void built from missed opportunities for intimacy, scant conversation, and an endless excuse of fatigue. And that ever-present phone, always in her hand, always drawing her gaze away from us, spoke volumes. I noticed how quickly it was tucked away whenever I entered the room. These weren't just quirks. They were glaring red flags. I initially chalked it up to stress, or perhaps my own shortcomings. But as days melted into weeks, that nagging voice in the back of my head grew louder and impossible to ignore. So, I made a choice. I hired a private investigator. $2,000 later, I unearthed the brutal truth. Brenda had been meeting with Marcus, her ex, the man who had shattered her world. And now I knew exactly what she had planned for me. As if on a predetermined schedule, Brenda folded a sheet of paper and laid it down on the table. Her hands lingered on its edges, as if searching for the courage to speak. Meeting my gaze, her lips pressed into a tight line before she quietly announced, "Brian, I have something to tell you." I set my coffee down deliberately, my eyes never leaving hers. "Go ahead," I said, my voice calm yet inviting. She fidgeted with the tablecloth before admitting, "I'll be gone for a month." The words dropped into the heavy silence, like a stone in a still pond. I leaned forward, remaining steady. "Okay," I replied, but then her tone shifted as she added, I'll be staying with Marcus. It's his birthday month, and I want to make it special for him." I leaned back, absorbing her confession. On the outside, I maintained an even demeanor, though anger flared within. Struggling to stay composed, I asked sharply, "So what exactly will you be doing there? Cleaning his house, cooking his meals, and having sex with him? Can't he just hire a professional to do those things? Why must our married life turn me into this pawn?" Her eyes widened in shock. "What the hell are you talking about? I'm not serving as a maid or a hired help. I'll be there as his wife." I set my coffee cup down slowly, my tone unyielding. "But you are my wife. Isn't any intimacy with him, whatever you call it, cheating on our marriage?" With no hesitation, she met my eyes and stated flatly, "No, because I told you it isn't cheating." I pressed on, the absurdity of her logic hanging heavy in the air. "So, what exactly do you expect from me? Sit and wait for 30 days while my wife pursues a new affair?" Her frustration boiled over. "Brian, I have desires, and only Marcus can fulfill them," she snapped sharply. "Desires? Like tying you down and punishing you?" I knew all too well about her secret desires. I'd seen the texts, watched the videos, scenes forever burned into my mind. Maintaining a calm facade, I asked, "So you have desires. What about mine? Am I just supposed to ignore them?" Her voice, edged with exasperation, quivered as she retorted, "Fine, do what you want, But when I come back, you'll resume being a faithful husband. I leaned in, my tone icy. And what if 30 days isn't enough to satisfy mine? What if I discover a fulfillment that makes returning to you unacceptable? Her face contorted with anger, but before she could answer, I turned my gaze to Karen, who had been silently absorbing every word. What do you think, Karen? I asked pointedly. Should your mother throw away our marriage for a month with her new lover? Karen offered a defiant smile. Mom has needs and desires. You don't own her. She's not here to serve you. She can choose for herself. Her tone stung like a slap. It became clear. Karen wasn't neutral. She was encouraging Brenda's choice, and as it turned out, Karen planned to join them at Marcus's house too. The realization twisted something deep inside me, but I forced a calm smile and raised my hands in surrender. If both of you truly want this, I won't stand in your way. A smug smile crept over Brenda's face, one that hurt more than any accusation. I wasn't finished. In a measured tone, I continued. Brenda, I want us to sign a legal document establishing a 30-day separation. During that time, I will not have any legal or financial responsibility towards you or Karen, giving each of us the freedom to pursue our desires. Her eyes narrowed in skepticism. How would that even work? I reclined in my chair calmly. I'll call my lawyer right away. He'll draft the necessary papers and we'll appear in court tomorrow. It's that simple. I paused, letting the gravity of my words settle before adding with a hint of sarcasm. So now, you're free to be with whoever you want for 30 days. It's not cheating if we're officially separated. And trust me, I can finally handle my own desires without compromise. Brenda's eyes flickered with suspicion. Am I missing something here? Why are you doing this? I rose slowly, meeting her gaze with unwavering certainty. Because Brenda, your actions foretold this outcome. You wouldn't stop, so why should I? Besides, I see this as an opportunity to finally satisfy my own needs. Karen chimed in with a smug tone. Mom, not bad. You've always wanted your own space, and Brian's come through. Matching her defiant smile with my own cool composure, I said, Oh, you have no idea. Without another word, I left the room with my phone in hand and dialed my lawyer. Do it, I instructed shortly after. By that afternoon, my lawyer and Brenda were seated in our living room. Neatly arranged documents lay between us. Without even reading through them, Brenda signed with a flourish, her confidence radiating with every stroke of the pen. I leaned back and calmly announced, It's done, and it'll all be official by tomorrow. That evening, I told Brenda I was heading out for a drink. No explanations necessary. I left, returning hours later, deliberately late to avoid any confrontation. The next day, we found ourselves in a courthouse. Brenda stood by me with an air of cool determination. The judge glanced at the papers and asked in a neutral tone, Mrs. Wilson, did you have these documents reviewed by your attorney? Without hesitation, Brenda replied, Yes, Your Honor. The judge then explained the terms. For the next 30 days, I would have no financial responsibility for either you or your daughter, and I could do as I pleased. That evening, Brenda bustled around, packing her bags with an enthusiasm I hadn't seen for months. Her face lit up in what she claimed was happiness. I stood at the door with crossed arms, her excited gratitude. Thank you, Brian. I'll make it up to you when I get back. Sounding almost laughable. I offered only a faint smile and a quiet, Don't worry, I'll find my own happiness. And with that, I walked out, each step heavy with calculated resolve. Everything was set, a plan meticulously orchestrated over months. I prided myself on being logical, never letting emotions hijack my decisions. Yet today, as I stood there, an achingly unfamiliar loss etched itself under my calm exterior. I wasn't just mourning Brenda. I was grieving a part of my life I'd sacrificed trying to help her daughter, the countless hours, the family car I'd bought, the college fund I'd painstakingly built, all for a love that now seemed a distant illusion. Life rarely promises an easy road. Newton's third law rings true. Every action meets an equal reaction. And now, I was ready to unleash my own. That night, as Brenda left with her daughter to join Marcus, I made sure to wave goodbye, a final farewell they'd see. Once they were out of sight, I retreated to the kitchen, grabbed a bottle of Jack Daniels, poured a generous measure over ice, and savored that familiar warmth. Then I called my lawyer with one simple instruction. It's time. Let's start the show. The next morning, I began dismantling what was once our joint life. First on the list was the Honda I'd purchased for Karen, a car she had once admired, though she'd complained about its color. Now she could choose a new ride, and perhaps Marcus would pick out one for her next. Then I turned to the car Brenda once adored. Now for the next 30 days, Marcus would handle her transportation. No longer would I provide that comfort. As for our home, it was simply too big, a constant reminder of compromises and shattered dreams. I'd heard enough complaints about wanting a cozier place, an echo of the house Marcus once had. Well, they're already living that dream now, so why not make it permanent? By the end of the day, I had executed my plan. Over $2 million transferred into my offshore account. No more sacrifices. I was finally free to follow my desires without anyone holding me back. For 3 long days, silence reigned, a silence that was almost peaceful. Then the phone started ringing. It was Brenda, her voice trembling as she called out, "Where are you?" I couldn't help but smile at the irony. I sipped my drink slowly and answered, "Taking care of my desires." And with that, I ended the call before she could protest. That night, my phone buzzed nonstop. First Brenda, then Karen, each call filled with fury and desperation. I suspected they had seen the bank notifications. Our joint account was empty, the college fund drained. I let the calls ring for a while, allowing them time to stew in their own turmoil. After 3 agonizing days, I finally answered a call from Brenda with a calm, almost casual, "Hey Brenda, how are you?" She unleashed a torrent of insults and accusations, and I listened quietly. When her rant subsided, I said, "I guess now isn't the time for more talk. Bye," and hung up. For 5 days, her furious calls came one after another, each one more frantic than the last. Then on the 6th day, there was a change. Her tone had cooled. "Why did you take away all the money?" she finally asked. I leaned back, reflecting. Well, living comfortably in a 5-star hotel in Jamaica isn't free, unless I drain your daughter's college fund. Shock and fury exploded in her voice. That was her dream vacation. "How could you do this?" she shrieked. I replied calmly, "My desire was for you to remain faithful, and when that failed, I pursued the next best thing, a vacation in Jamaica with a young blonde Russian woman." Brenda's voice cracked with fury as she vowed, "You won't get away with this. Once I return, you'll pay." I could feel the blaze of anger in her words through the phone, yet it barely shook my resolve. I wasn't in the mood for more conflict. I took a breath and said, "I guess you're angry," in a tone so measured it bordered on icy calm, and before she could add another word, I ended the call. Nearly a month had passed, and it was time to move to the next phase. I boarded a plane with a determined destination in mind, Thailand. Back when I worked as a software analyst, a partnership opportunity in Bangkok had been offered to me. I had brushed it off then, but now with nothing tethering me to a broken life, I accepted with little hesitation. The flight was long and reflective. When I finally landed in Bangkok, I felt the strange relief of making a choice, to move on. I immediately called my lawyer. She was to return that very day, and I left her a parting gift. Soon after, Brenda and Karen returned to what they called home, only to be met by a man waiting at their door. With all the professionalism of a script, he asked, "Are you Mrs. Brenda Wilson?" As her face filled with confusion and dread, he handed her a manila envelope, snapped a photo, and walked away. That captured moment, a tear tracing down Brenda's cheek as Karen stood stunned, was, in a way, the perfect punctuation mark to our story. I waited until I was comfortably isolated in my hotel room before I called Brenda. No words were needed at first. She answered promptly, only to erupt immediately. "You're not an honorable man. You're jealous of Marcus. You just can't handle your own ego." I sat silently, letting her storm through while I prepared my final response. When she finally quieted, I asked evenly, "Did you open the envelope?" After a pause and the sound of rustling paper, she admitted, "Inside were images, timestamps, locations, even scenes where you could see I was tied to a bed." I replied calmly, "Yes, I did. And since you made your bed, you're going to sleep in it." Her voice trembled as she said, "Oh no, Why should I stop you? I continued coolly. Once you decided to cheat, you ended our marriage. Besides, why would I choose between a cheating wife and a vacation in Jamaica? The next move was almost effortless. The divorce was filed on grounds of adultery. I left enough money in our joint account so that, hopefully, it would cover what you need to reach Marcus's place. I could hear the raw anger on the other end of the line. Then Karen joined, and it was a barrage of furious accusations that I knew was the last conversation we would ever have. Still, I endured. In a voice mingling rage and disbelief, Karen finally said, "You sold my car." I replied coolly, "Yes, I sold it." Her desperation echoed as she cried, "You took away my college fund." I could no longer hide my bitterness. "No, I took it back for my Jamaican vacation." Then, without missing a beat, I added, "As you said, your mother can drink from any watering hole. So can I." Karen screamed again, voice trembling with indignation. "What will I tell my friends? My car is gone." I met her outburst with calm finality. "Tell them your loser stepfather sold it to fund his vacation, and now you're going back to live with your biological father." There was a sharp intake of breath before Brenda snatched the phone back, accusing me. "You stole our money. I'll call the cops." I responded evenly. "You signed a legal document that waived my financial responsibility for the past 30 days. I spent every last cent, and now I'm broke." Her disbelief was palpable. "You expect me to believe that?" I smiled inwardly and said softly, "I never asked you to believe me. Court will prove it." I ended the call with a calm directive. "For any further communication, please call my lawyer. His number's in the envelope. Have a good day, Brenda." Days later, Brenda fought the divorce in vain. My lawyer presented time-stamped evidence and receipts proving that every dollar had been spent on vacations in Jamaica and the Cayman Islands, all legally documented. The judge, with a knowing smirk, declared, "Tough luck, lady. The divorce is granted and the joint account money goes to you." A month after the divorce, Brenda and Karen moved in with Marcus, a reunion that looked nothing like the happy picture they'd imagined. Instead, it was a return to the toxic cycle. Marcus, even in his drunken state, resumed the abuse he'd once inflicted. Brenda, unable to escape him, was trapped in the nightmare she never truly left, while Karen became a silent witness to the pain. No more luxuries, no easy rides to school, no comfort. And as for Marcus, my calculated revenge was not meant for violence. I simply gave him what he desired, leaving him responsible for his new family and the consequences of his actions. Sometimes you have to be careful what you wish for. You might just get it. Dear listeners, if you enjoyed this story, please consider subscribing to our channel and sharing your thoughts below. We truly value your feedback. That night, I watched Brenda and Karen leave one last time. With a steady hand, I grabbed a bottle of Jack Daniels, poured myself a strong drink, and toasted to new beginnings. I then called my lawyer one final time saying, "It's done. Let's start the show." The following day, I woke with a clear plan. I began by selling the Honda I'd bought for Karen, the one she once complained about, and next I turned my attention to Brenda's treasured car. For the next 30 days, Marcus would handle her transportation. I was done giving comfort that I no longer deserved. Our home, once filled with memories and compromises, was just too large for them now. They always talked about wanting something smaller, cozier, like Marcus's place. Well, that was exactly what they got. By day's end, I had more than $2 million safely tucked away offshore, finally free to live by my own rules with no one holding me back. For 3 long days, silence reigned like a fragile peace. Then the phone started ringing again. First Brenda, then Karen, their voices a mix of anger and shock. I had no need to answer immediately. Let them stew in the mess I'd created. On the 6th day, I finally picked up. "Hey Brenda, how are you?" I asked flatly. "Sorry, I was busy taking care of my desires," I added, barely concealing a smirk. Brenda erupted, unleashing a torrent of insults. I listened calmly, waiting for her to finish. When silence finally fell, I said, "I guess it's time to say goodbye." I ended the call without another word, and for 5 days her furious calls echoed relentlessly. Then on the 6th day, her voice softened. "Why did you take our money?" she asked. I replied thoughtfully, "Living in a 5-star hotel in Jamaica isn't cheap, Unless I drain your daughter's college fund. Her voice rose in disbelief. That was my dream vacation. How could you do this? I calmly explained. My desire was for you to be faithful. When that didn't work out, I opted for the next best thing. A vacation in Jamaica with a young blonde Russian woman to keep me company. Brenda's fury was palpable as she screamed, "You will not get away with this. When I return, you'll pay." I could feel her anger burn through the phone line, but I held my ground. "I understand you're angry," I said in a voice both cold and measured, "but I'm done with your threats." Before she could reply, I ended the call. Nearly a month had passed, and it was time to move on. I boarded a plane knowing exactly where I needed to be: Thailand. Back when I was working as a software analyst, I'd been offered a partnership in Bangkok. Then it didn't feel right. Now nothing was holding me back. So I accepted, and the long flight gave me time to reflect on everything that led me here. When the wheels finally touched down, relief washed over me. I had made my choice. I turned on my phone and called my lawyer with one simple message. "She'll be back today. Please give her my gift." That evening, Brenda and Karen returned home, or what they used to call home. At the door, a man waited, his professional tone chillingly calm as he asked, "Are you Mrs. Brenda Wilson?" Brenda nodded, eyes wide with confusion and dread, as he handed her a manila envelope, snapped a quick picture, and walked away. The image of Brenda holding that envelope, tears welling up, and Karen standing shocked in the driveway was unforgettable. I let the calls from them ring on until I was back in the safety of my hotel room. I called Brenda. Without preamble, she exploded with anger. "You're not an honorable man. You're jealous of Marcus, and you can't handle your own ego." I listened in silence until I could ask calmly, "Did you open the envelope?" After a pause and the sound of rustling paper, she admitted, "Yes, I saw everything. Timestamps, locations, even moments when, you know." I replied, "Yes, I did. Since you made your bed, now sleep in it." Her response faltered. "Oh no, why should I stop you?" I continued evenly. "Once you decided to cheat, you ended our marriage. And frankly, why choose between a cheating wife and a vacation in Jamaica?" The final blow came swiftly. The divorce was filed for adultery. I had left funds in the joint account so they could cover your expenses to reach Marcus's house, if that's what you needed. I could hear the raw anger, the desperate tone of anger in their voices, but I didn't care. The ball was in their court now. Karen's voice came through with one final accusation. "You sold my car." I replied simply, "Yes, I did." She cried, "You took away my college fund." I couldn't hide the bitterness any longer. "No," I said coldly. "I reclaimed what was mine so I could fund my Jamaican vacation. As you put it, your mother can drink from any watering hole, so can I." Karen screamed then, her words trembling with raw frustration. "What will I tell my friends? My car is gone." I met her outburst with finality. "Tell them your loser stepfather sold it for his vacation, and now you're going back to live with your biological father." A sharp sound of disbelief echoed on the line until Brenda seized the phone, accusing, "You stole our money. I'm calling the cops." I replied, "You signed away my financial obligation during those 30 days. I spent every cent, and now I'm broke." She retorted, "You expect me to believe that?" I simply smiled inwardly and said, "Court will prove it." I ended the call with finality. "For any further communication, call my lawyer. His number is in the envelope. Have a good day, Brenda." A few days later, Brenda tried to contest the divorce, claiming I had approved her stay with Marcus. My lawyer presented undeniable evidence, timestamps, receipts, every detail of my vacation in Jamaica and the Cayman Islands, proving that I was clear-headed in every financial move. The judge, amused by the sheer absurdity, smirked and declared, "Tough luck, lady. The divorce is granted and the remaining joint funds go to you." Shortly after the divorce, Brenda and Karen moved in with Marcus. However, reality was harsh. A toxic cycle resumed. Marcus, now back on his old habits, reverted to the abusive ways that once marred their lives. Brenda found herself trapped with nowhere to turn, while Karen became a silent witness to it all. No more luxuries, no more easy buses to school. And as for Marcus, my revenge wasn't meant to be violent. It was simply a twist of fate. I handed him what he craved, and now he must live with the consequences of his actions. Sometimes you have to be so careful what you wish for because you just might get it. Thank you for staying with us through this intense story. If this narrative struck a chord, please consider subscribing to our channel and drop a comment sharing your thoughts. You never know who else needs to hear this story. With that, I left as Brenda and Karen departed with Marcus. I grabbed a bottle of Jack Daniels, poured a strong drink over ice, and let the familiar burn remind me that this new chapter was mine to command. I then made a final call to my lawyer to get things set in motion. "It's all done," I said calmly, and then the next morning I set my plan in motion. I sold the Honda I bought for Karen, her once favorite car she complained about, and moved on to liquidate Brenda's prize car. For the next 30 days, Marcus will be driving her around, and I will no longer provide that comfort. Our big empty house, once a symbol of our shared life, will soon be theirs, a permanent reminder of what has been lost. By the end of the day, I had over $2 million secure in my offshore account. No more sacrifices. I was finally free to chase my own desires without any ties. After 3 days of uneasy silence, the phone rang again. First Brenda, then Karen, their furious voices filling the line. I let them ring until I retreated to the sanctuary of my hotel room once more. I answered with measured calm. "Hey, Brenda, how are you? Sorry, I was busy taking care of my desires." Their anger, shock, and desperation poured out in relentless calls for days on end. On the 6th day, Brenda's tone finally softened as she asked, "Why did you take away all our money?" I responded slowly, "Because living in a 5-star hotel in Jamaica comes with a price tag, unless I emptied your daughter's college fund, right?" Her scream of rage cracked the phone line. "That was my dream vacation," she cried. I replied in a calm, almost detached tone. "My desire was for you to remain faithful, but that plan fell apart, so I opted for a vacation in Jamaica with a young blonde Russian woman." Brenda's voice cracked with fury as she vowed, "You will not get away with this. When I return, you'll pay." I listened unfazed and finally said, "I understand you're angry. I have no time for further threats." Before she could scream again, I ended the call. Now, as I board my next flight to Bangkok, I am stepping into a future unburdened by the past. Life is full of unexpected twists, and perhaps this is just the beginning of a new chapter for all of us. Thank you for listening to our story. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe, comment, and like. We appreciate every bit of support from you. And so, with a final look back, I embrace the next phase of my journey. This is my story, a tale of loss, revenge, and rediscovered freedom.